begin this week's Odyssey House Journals podcast with the burning, dirty old man question that I always have. What are you wearing, Rachel?
My shirt today is simple and to the point. It says, be a kind human being. So I'm trying to state
that pretty much says it all. Is it from some organization or just your belief about the way you go through life?
It's actually my belief on how I go through life.
So be kind, be a kind human. That's a good thing to think about today.
Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you joined. Oh, I like your hair, by the way, too.
Thank you. It's the Geico commercial that roughly mane. I was inspired.
Well, now that we're done with the fashion part of our show, we should start with who we are. I'm Randall Carlisle. That's Rachel Santizo. This is Odyssey House Journals, and it's a raw and honest look at addiction and recovery in hopes of helping other people understand the disease, or if you happen to be dealing with addiction, to possibly get some help, right?
Absolutely. Well said.
Okay. Hey, this is really exciting. We are one of the most watched podcasts and listened to for addiction and recovery in the area. And I just got our analytics from our friend Matt. And other than the United States, guess what our top 2 countries are of people watching and listening to this?
So I'm not sure, but I am going to guess my state, or I'm going to guess Russia because my friend Igor.
Your friend Igor is in Russia. You're right. Russia is second. In the last month, we had 43 people in Russia tune into this. So Igor, if you're watching, thank you. And Rachel's, yes, big love from Rachel. And as we said, if you ever make it to the US, we'll buy you some vodka that's better than your cheap vodka, okay? I didn't mean to demean that. There's some good Russian vodka, although Rachel and I don't drink anymore. Right. The number 1 country outside the United States is, okay, it's a country where we make jokes of these people drinking a lot, which is not necessarily true, but it's a stereotype of their country. Can you think of it?
Germany?
No. Think of all the pubs in major cities. Where do they come from?
Ireland?
Pardon me?
Ireland?
Yes, you got it. So Ireland, we had 47 people last month tuning into our podcast. So
that's incredible.
Yeah. So so all of you in Ireland, thank you for watching. And we are not making fun of you because we all have, the US has as many issues as any other country does when it comes to addiction and recovery, if not more. Now, with all that said, Rachel has been doing so great getting guests on her podcast. Who do you have today?
Thank you for that, Randall. So today my word is going to be influential. This gentleman, he's basically taken his trauma and transformed it into dance. And I'm so honored and excited to announce Austin Gillespie to our show today.
Austin, come on down. There he is.
Hi.
Hello.
You have a live audience of 2, so welcome to.
Great.
Yes. So can you give us a little background of your story and where you were and where you're at today?
Yeah. So I was raised here in Utah. And I was adopted. So my birth family's from South Africa. And I was born during the apartheid. And people that, if you don't know what that is, basically my mom's white. So it was illegal for me to be conceived. So I'm half Indian. So she found a family out here. I was born and raised out here. And I think that's like where my biggest struggle growing up was. I didn't realize I had an issue with it, but I think growing up and knowing I didn't look the same as my family was the first time I started to feel different. And had that longing to fit in, if that makes sense. And so
We all have that longing as we're growing up, right?
Yeah. And I had a really hard time figuring out my place. So yeah, I grew up in Farmington, and
Of course, Farmington has a ton of mixed race people from South Africa, right?
yeah, no,
Yeah.
definitely not. So definitely was a minority there. But yeah, I'm also gay as well. So growing up in the predominantly, the religion here, my dad worked for the church for 50 years. He was a bishop for 6. He retired from the church. So it was really hard to communicate. So when I was 15, I ended up finding somebody online who was much older than me. I was 15, he was 45. And that's when my trauma began. It's also when my drinking started. So I started getting sexually abused when I was 15 and didn't really have anybody to talk to about it or open up to about it, because I felt like the problem wasn't the age difference, because I didn't really understand that. It was me being gay. And so I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody about it because of that. So that went on for about a year. And once I hit 17, I started using meth, and that the rest was history. I didn't stop until I got locked up for a year. And I started therapy after that.
And during that time frame, and first I want to be very sensitive, and I want to also tell you how grateful I am for you to be open about this. But you during that time frame, you also contracted HIV, correct?
Yes.
And how does that play a part in your story?
That's a huge part. And I'm sorry if I get emotional talking about this. Is the first time I've like really opened up about this live like this without a therapist.
Please don't ever be sorry about anything that you are, because you are incredible regardless.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, I contracted HIV and through sharing needles. And I mean, it played a huge part with me spiking my use up, for sure. I didn't know what it meant for me. My mom asked me when I was gonna die when she found out, and because my parents are pretty. My dad's 82. My mom's about 78. So I mean, that age gap, like in their generation too, like HIV and AIDS was a death sentence, and I believed that it was too. I didn't know about it, so I just assumed I was gonna die soon. So even though the doctor said, I could live a long, healthy life, I didn't understand that. So when she asked me that, I didn't get any hugs from my family. Like, I didn't get any support from my family. They didn't know how to. They're very much.
What old were you at this time?
I was 22. So 10 years ago.
And in those days, I mean, I remember it well when HIV and AIDS first came to the spotlight. People were like afraid to touch people with AIDS or to be around them at all.
Yeah, I was afraid to touch people because I had it. It went the other way too. Like, I would bleach my shower. I'd bleach the sink after I used a plate. Like, it was dramatic, like, because I didn't understand it. And I really thought I was plagued. Like, I would cry every time I shaved. Because if I saw any blood, like, I would cry. And because I felt like, and my friend Saquon, who started the I forgot what it's called, Hope on Tap, where she does HIV testing and stuff. But her story is similar, where, contracting it was me. Like, it was my identity. Like, I didn't have anything, like, I felt so consumed by it. And it took a really long time to process.
How did you you're describing I mean, most of us, whether we understand addiction, recovery, anything else, I mean, you grow up mixed race, gay in Davis County, strong LDS parents. I mean, you know, that's almost a recipe for disaster. It's pretty understandable what you went through. So how and then you contract HIV to top it all off. I mean, so how did you get from there to where you're at today? I mean, that's a pretty miraculous story.
Yeah, I think it's a huge process still. Like I still process a lot of my trauma. Like it still creeps up. But the number one thing I did, I went through a 12-step program, was my first stint in recovery, and it was called Valley Camp up in Ogden. I don't know if you've heard about that. It's an amazing place.
I went to I've gone to several AA meetings in the summer where you have the bonfire. When is it, on Saturday night?
So fun. Yeah, that's where I found my first community. I got clean and sober out there. It kept me, like, I went back 3 times, but the third time I went there, I stayed clean for 5.5 years.
Can I ask you a question about that, Austin? Yeah. Regarding, because you have this family that's in the religion and you're feeling certain ways, you know, regarding it because of your identity and who you are. How did you transform that when you were doing 12 steps, when it refers to God or higher power? Like, was that healing for you? Was that helpful? Like, how did that transform for you?
At first it was really hard. That's when I left. Every time was during the God part. Like I didn't understand it. And I was so traumatized by the limitations of like me being able to communicate in the religion, because I was raised up in this, like, my dad was a bishop. Like we had standards, we had to live by a certain degree, you know, we had all these expectations on me and my brother. And so when I got to the second step and had to figure out my spirituality, finally I was reading this book called Conversations with God. And it talks about how God says, hey, I am where you feel joy. When you feel joy and happiness, like that's where God is. Like whenever you feel excited, that's where I'm at, you know. That's where your higher soul is. So I turned on, you're gonna laugh at this, it's super gay of me, but I was listening to Teenage Dream by Katy Perry. And I was listening to this song in my room by myself, listening to a little bit of my Walkman, right? And the song, I felt like my spirit was singing to me and saying, hey, let's run away and don't ever look back. I can be your teenage dream. And it was the first time I felt connected to my soul. And I just started crying, and I'm like, oh my God, this is how I pray. So I would hide in the woods at Valley Camp. I'd go hide in the campgrounds every day, and I just listen to my CD player. And my friends, my sponsor and my friends would bring up different mixes and stuff for me to listen to. But that's when I started realizing, started using dance as my spirituality, because, and I think a huge part of it too is like, I wasn't able to communicate my whole life. And so being able to express myself in a way, because I didn't ever learn how to speak about my trauma, and like being able to dance through my pain and express it that way is kind of how I found my spirituality. And fun to go along with that, with HIV, when I first went to Valley Camp, I planned on going there to get sober so I could die. I wasn't going to take any meds. I was just going to clean up my life, clean up my side of the street. I was going to finish that all off, and I wasn't going to take my meds. And I was pretty open about it to a few people, and was like, and to a couple of my friends, and letting them know, I'm like, don't really want to keep going. I was listening and dancing and praying to this album. I don't remember what it was, but I ended up walking in the snow, and there was like this perfect pathway to this, like, just kind of like little tree, but it had benches around it. So it had a little pathway. I walked through the snow over to it, sat down, listening to this song, dancing, and I had this overwhelming feeling that, hey, you can't help anybody unless you help yourself. Like, you need to take your meds. And I just had like this overwhelming feeling that I needed to do that. And so I decided to go get checked, see if I was able to, if I had AIDS yet, and to see if I could take meds, only to find out.
Describe that, like, so if you have AIDS, you can't take meds. If you have HIV,
well, you can take meds. I just didn't understand. I still hadn't, like, because I wasn't planning on taking the meds, so I didn't really understand how it worked. But yeah, there's a lot of people that have beat AIDS that have gone to, and I don't know that all the terminology for it, but basically, if your blood count, your viral load or your white blood cell count falls below a certain amount, then it's AIDS. But if it's above a certain amount, it's HIV. Right? It's like it has to fall below 400 or something like that. But people can take meds and I know people that have had AIDS and now they have HIV. So yeah.
I think that can keep us sick, right? Is be fearful of like our physical health. And so for those that think that it's possible that they might have it, or they do have it and they're afraid of it, like understanding that there's options.
There's so many options. And I'm like, it doesn't change my like quality of life at all. Any like at all anymore. It's still kind of like, it's a little like I'm navigating still a little bit, because I still felt like it was something that was limiting me for the whole time I was sober that first stint. Now I'm still kind of working through that and realizing it's not. But that tree that I was sitting next to, hit the person's ashes that were buried under it had died from HIV.
Oh, wow.
So that's when my spirituality started building, and I'm like, wow, there's something to this, you know? And so that's why I kept dancing. And I realized this go around, now I've had a lot of clinical help instead of just the 12 steps, because I ended up relapsing 5.5 years in, and I was raped again twice in a week. And it reopened all this trauma that I grew up with, because there was many, that older man wasn't the only one. There's many after him. So and it reopened all that trauma for me. So that's what I've been working with the last 2.5 years.
What a lot of people who don't understand addiction or recovery always ask the question. You said you went to Valley Camp 3 times, right? Before it worked. Okay. Yeah. What made it work the 3rd time, or what got you sober for the longest period of time? What was it?
I think it was like I just had to keep trying. I don't think it was like I went to different treatment centers even before that, which was forced on me, right? Or it was an ultimatum for my family or whatever. But when I really start counting my recovery when I wanted to go. And I feel like it wasn't anything specific that kept me sober. It was really like learning that first 30 days that I was sober. Like, I thought I was being honest. Like, I really didn't know what honesty meant, right? I thought I was being honest to myself. I thought I was working the steps correctly. There were some things that I didn't want to talk about, so I didn't put them on my 4th step, right? Or didn't talk about it or whatever. So that first 30 days, I learned a lot after the relapse. After I went back out, I learned a lot when I came back, and then realizing, oh, I relapsed because I wasn't being honest or whatever the case may be. So each time I came back, I had a little longer. I stayed sober a little bit longer. But even though I relapsed, like, I learned a lot from just that time being sober and realizing, like, okay, I need to put in more work this time. You know,
and people don't realize that this is a disease we're talking about. It's a disease with learned behaviors that have gone over years and years and years. And to deal with the disease physically and then emotionally and change that learned behavior, it's very hard to do. You can't do it in 30 or 60 days. It takes years. And that's why when people say, when you say you relapsed and then you learned, That's all part of the process. It doesn't mean you're a loser. It doesn't mean you're back where you began. It's just part of the learning process in recovery, right?
Right, 100%. I have been sober this stint 2.5 years, but I still recognize that I've been in recovery for 8. So I definitely
that is such a good point. So I feel like, so we talk about this this art of expression, dance, right? And coming back, you created a dance that kind of like expresses this, and it's the putting the mask on, right? Like the airplane.
Yeah.
I just feel like maybe you could just do that dance and express and show people like what it is. I think that those little movements speak volume.
Yeah, actually, one of my friends, me and my friend, growing up in high school, I was a cheerleader, and she was on the dance company. Yeah, her name's Angelica, but she made that up, and then I kind of created the reason behind it, right? So, and I showed Rachel this. So, it's called the Flight Attendant, right? I wish we had a beat going on,
I know.
but yeah. So you gotta when you grab a air mask, or what is it called? The oxygen mask.
Yeah.
So who do you put it on first?
Yourself,
right? Before you hand it to somebody else. So you gotta, right? And then you gotta get the seatbelts, and then you gotta point for the exits. You gotta have a relapse prevention plan. That's what that is. And then if that doesn't work, you gotta grab your life vest, put it on. You gotta pull it, but it doesn't inflate, so you have to do it manually, right? You gotta pull out that big book and no, but yeah. So we started creating choreography to walk through different things, right? And what's funny is that you bring that up, because I literally had somebody message me last night, and I have started doing this week, where I've grabbed this oxygen mask and I put it on my face just to see if I actually have it on first before I help somebody. And last night I'm like, I don't have mine on. I need to take, because I've been so busy the last couple weeks. So I'm like, no, I need to take care of myself right now.
How do you spread your message of dance and recovery to the rest of all of us in the recovery community?
Yeah, so we actually have a program called Recovery Vibe.
All right.
But we meet every Thursday. The location changes sometimes, but right now we're downtown. But yeah, we have a group of people a regular group of people that come. And none of them really want to be, I mean, some of them do, but most people aren't coming to be professional dancers, they're here to have some fun. Honestly, I tell them at the end, it's a little trick to get them vulnerable, because it's embarrassing sometimes, or someone's new in recovery. It's like, I don't want to dance in front of a bunch of people. So we dim the lights and we teach some fun hip hop moves. And sometimes it's choreographed to like walk through pain, or one of my main ones that I made was marching up to your trauma, zipping it up in a bag, and then relearning how to move your body without this weight on your body. Because a lot of the times we carry this weight and we're comfortable with it. So learning how to dance without it. And then we circle up at the end and chat.
Boy, I can relate to that. In my treatment program, they made us dance. First of all, I'm an old fart. Secondly, I don't have any rhythm in my body. And I have always been uncomfortable if I ever had to try to dance fast. I can dance slow, but that doesn't take any skill. And so they made us do that. And it's exactly what you were saying. It made you vulnerable, because you're afraid to do it, and you feel like an ass doing it.
Right. You feel silly, and you're like looking around at other people. And I love taking dance classes, because I can know where I'm at in my head. Like, how confident am I? Do I care about what other people think? Am I really worried about this? So, but yeah, it gets people vulnerable. Then when we sit down and talk, they're not scared to talk, because they just did something way more nerve-wracking.
And you've gone into treatment centers. I know that you've come into Odyssey House, and we did the thriller dance. And so that's a love within your community with those that are brand new
Yeah, yeah. I love, that's my favorite thing to do is going to treatment center. So I am recovery. We go there as well. We went to Recovery Ways for a while. COVID obviously has been changing things up. And 7th Street. I love them.
Austin, so I just want to thank you for everything. I'd like to bring up one more topic that I think is so important for people to hear. And we're getting short on time. And so first, thank you for agreeing to speak about it. And I'm going to let you speak about it how you want to, but it's the topic of when you're in recovery and you work so hard and then you're falsely accused of something. Like, how did you do it? How did you remain sober?
So honestly, I think that if I wasn't in a sober living home and going to treatment, I wouldn't be. I have a lot of PTSD from rape specifically. It was pretty traumatic a couple of years ago, how it happened. So I had done all this work, all this EMDR work. I had, thank God, once this happened, but somebody catfished me, attacked him. There was a magazine article. It was shared 800 times. Like, my picture was shared. It was crazy. And I was on camera in sober living, right? And I just built this huge community, this new community in Salt Lake, not Ogden this time. And then everybody started unfriending me, and I felt like I was so isolated. But I feel like how I did it was I reached out every second. Like, I reached out every second. There were people making fake posts. I was just talking to my friend about this, and they would make posts with my face on it and message me saying that you're gonna get raped. And so of course this triggered my, like, I didn't know if people were coming to attack me or like, just PTSD isn't rational, right? So I had like, I didn't sleep for a few days. My sober living home, like, I had to have my back to the wall. I kept always checking the locks in my house. And so my community that I had built in the sober living community, they'd helped me out a lot. But it was really reaching out, like, being like, this time in recovery, I've reached out every time I need help, because my feeling of being annoying, you know, like, if I'm being a pest, like, my life is worth that. Like, I'm gonna risk being annoying and reaching out every time that I feel like I'm gonna do something, or feel like I'm gonna use, or feel like I want to self-harm, or feel like anything. Like, I'm gonna reach out, because even if I'm bugging somebody, or risk that. So because my life's worth it. So that's really the thing that saved me, was reaching out every single time. And to multiple people. Like, I didn't put that weight on one person. Like, I would message like 30 people at a time. So that way I knew one person out of the 30 would message me back. And couldn't have that, well, you didn't message me, so I relapsed, or anything like that. So that's what worked for me.
That's the message in any treatment program, or in AA meetings or anything else, is if you need help, reach out and don't isolate yourself. I mean, so you were really smart through all this. So we are 29 minutes in, so we're almost out of time. And I'll share with people, we were chatting before we started this, and you said you were nervous and a little uptight about doing the podcast. You have been wonderful, and I appreciate you sharing your story, because it's not easy to talk about all those things. But the thing, and I'm sure you know this now after years and years of recovery, that you sharing your story, somebody else out there is going to be going through the exact same thing that you've gone through, and they'll see your success in recovery, and it'll help them. So thank you very much for doing this.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
And Austin, we haven't done a podcast yet where I've had to hold back tears. And so I want you to understand like how influential you are just by using your voice. Like, I could barely hold back. And so I am glad that you decided to take your meds. I'm glad that you decided to sit. I'm glad that you decided to reach out. because you are so worthy and deserving, and we need more people like you.
You're a good man, Austin. Thank you. And what's it called? Recovery Vibe, right?
Recovery Vibe. Yep.
Okay. Well, keep on doing your recovery vibes. We'll keep on doing Odyssey House Journals, and we thank everybody in Russia and Ireland and all over the world for watching and listening. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.